All right, Jor. Let's start off with the introduction about you.
B, you were was this my third time on here so far?
I think so. Yeah, it's the third time.
You were actually the first person, maybe second. I think the other guy went out of business, so you were either the first or second person to ever interview me. So get on you, man, because not a whole lot of people want to interview me. Oh no, things are good here, man. It's mid-July. We finally got a couple months of summer. My little brother had a baby yesterday, so I'm officially an uncle now. And that's why I have didn't clean up my beard. I usually spend Sundays cleaning things up a bit, but I was visiting my new niece yesterday. So you're looking good. You got a new setup here, new mic?
Yeah, I've had this for about 6 months now or something. But yeah, it's slowly putting profits back into the company, you could say.
That a boy.
Yep.
We're actually supposed to have this conversation last month, but I hit a deer the day before, and I hadn't showered yet that day. That was a fun day.
All right.
Hit a deer, smashed my car, stayed at my grandma's house, came home, rushed home for an interview, didn't shower. And then I was like, V, man, sorry, I can't do it today. We're going to have to reschedule. So here we are.
Cool. So like, how's your channel going and stuff like that? Like, yeah, how's your channel going?
Channel's good. Although YouTube called one of my videos dangerous and misleading and took it down, gave me a strike. And so I kind of have been decentralizing myself a little bit. It's kind of like I believe that everything in the universe happens for a reason. And I feel like it was just kind of a good warning sign to me. Hey, maybe you shouldn't be everything on YouTube. So it's been good. It's, I still don't think YouTube loves the Bitcoin stuff and the crypto stuff as much. So it's a little bit difficult in that way, but I mean, there's no excuses. You put out valuable content and people are going to find it somehow. And, I'm just blown away by how many people are interested in Bitcoin at such a deep level. Like I have people from all over the world reaching out and setting up meetings with me and learning how to protect their Bitcoin and really understanding where this thing's going and making sure that they kind of have the foundation in place to make sure that they have that Bitcoin in 10, 20, 50 years from now for their family, right? So it's been really encouraging for me, giving me a lot of hope in these last 6 months about where this whole thing's going to. And it seems like people are really interested in what's happening here.
Cool. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin's new all-time high? It occurred like May 22nd. It was about like 110,000 or 112,000, something like that. So what are your thoughts on that? Right now, price is pretty much hovering at all-time highs. Is barely going up or down. So what do you think?
So I do a little tracker on my daily show that I do. And today was actually the third highest price since I've been doing my show in Bitcoin. And it's like nobody even really cares. It's funny. Everybody was going crazy when it hit like 100 and then it went up a little bit, down a little bit. And it has been flatlining here. I mean, you kind of expect it every time you go through a summer lull. People are out enjoying themselves. We don't have a whole lot of summer months here. So nobody really cares about their finances too much. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. It's unfortunate though, because the people, the BlackRocks of the world and the big entities of the world are just buying as much as they possibly can right now, while people are out on the boat. Which is, you have to enjoy your life, but you also have to understand what's happening here. And it just seems to me like there's so much big institutional buying happening right now, and the average person is just completely asleep to everything, which is sad. But I mean, you and I both are, I think, doing our best to try to get the average person involved in this. But it's like, you can only scream so much before you just kind of have to focus on the people who actually want to be here.
So I don't know who said this before, but someone said people cannot afford to not have Bitcoin. Maybe it was Michael Saylor. So what is the amount that you recommend people set as a goal?
Good question. I think he said, I don't know if it was Saylor who said that, but Saylor said that only buy Bitcoin with the money you can't afford to lose. So it's the same kind of thing, same kind of idea there. I don't really think that it's about an amount. I think that people should be, I think 1 million sats, that's kind of what I've been preaching. A couple other guys that I talk to a lot, like Jerry, he says 1 million sats. I think that 1 million sats with a long enough time frame is going to be life-changing for anybody and their generations to come. But I like to think of Bitcoin as more of like a savings technology, right? It's when you're storing your time and energy and like your wealth in something that they can't print more of, that's where you want to be. And when there's $3.3 trillion worth of money being created and added to the debt, that's a problem, because every dollar that they print, it makes our dollars less valuable. And so for the people who don't have a lot of savings, or they're kind of like paycheck to paycheck, they're the ones who are getting hurt most by this money printing. And so I just tell people, like, every time you make a dollar, just put it into Bitcoin. Anything you have excess, put it into Bitcoin, because that's the only way it's going to actually retain its purchasing power over time. Everything else, I think, aside from like gold, I like precious metals, gold and silver. I don't really hold any anymore, but I think it is the path that most people get to, from like completely asleep to what's going on here to like gold and silver. They realize there's a problem. They get some precious metals, because you can't print more gold. You can fake it, you can hide it, you can do a bunch of things with it, but you can't print more of it. And then I think down that path, people eventually lead themselves to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin to me is a far superior version of gold, for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, that's what I usually tell people, is just like, understand where this thing's going to. Take whatever you have today, put it into Bitcoin. Take every excess dollar that you make every week, put it into Bitcoin, and then just compound it. Hold it there, learn how to protect it, and just keep it there as a savings tool, instead of thinking about this like as an investment that you're going to buy low and then sell when it gets to X amount of price. Just save in Bitcoin, and your life's going to be a lot better in the future.
Nice. Yeah, but one of my old mentors, he used to say, like, people don't really have like a money problem. They have like a thinking problem. A lot of people say, oh, I don't have enough money. Well, you don't have to use your own, like you can, again, not financial advice, but, like, if I just bought Bitcoin with what I had, I would not have as much as I have now. Like, people don't, you have to think outside the box here. Like a company, they don't just buy with what they have as cash reserves. They issue shares, they issue equity, they take out debt, they offer these preferred, options or whatever that you can purchase. And then that's how they continue to buy Bitcoin. So we don't have that capability, but there's, stuff we can do to still have this thing that everyone probably eventually will want in the world, right?
Well, Michael Saylor, you're pretty familiar with what's going on with Strategy. That's what he's doing. He's shorting the fiat system. He knows that it cannot be saved. There's nothing that can turn around the fiat dollar. And so he's basically taking other people's money and buying Bitcoin and, leveraging that. And I think that is very smart. I get the question a lot, is like, should I sell Bitcoin to pay off my house? And I'm like, no, don't do that. That's so stupid, because you're paying like 3 or 4% long-term debt, long-term mortgage. And Bitcoin's been returning at 40, 50, 60% every year. That's a huge spread. So your outflows are 5% max. Your inflows, your purchasing power is increasing by 50, 60%. I think it's going to be higher over this next decade. It doesn't make any sense. So I would say the opposite. Like, if you have equity in your house, go to the bank and get HELOC, or a home equity line of credit, and buy Bitcoin with that. There's no certainties in life, but to me, the only certainty is that the dollar is going to continue to debase. That's it. And so you can store your wealth in real estate, you can store your wealth in gold, or Bitcoin, I think, is the best version of that. But I mean, most people would be familiar with the Rich Dad Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki. I read the book. It changed my life. I bought a rental house because real estate historically was one of the best stores of value, right? Real estate's gone up pretty much in the same rate as inflation. And so if you had money in the real estate market, then you kind of weren't affected by all the money that's been printed so far. And so I like to think of the Rich Dad Poor Dad model, but if you use Bitcoin instead of real estate, there's way less headache, better return. I think it's going to be much better collateral in the future. And that's what his whole strategy was, is like, buy houses, take the equity out, buy more houses with that, take the equity out, buy more houses. You don't pay any taxes along the way. You're never getting hit with taxes there, but you can keep leveraging up. If you're using smart, or Saylor calls it intelligent leverage, I think that it's a no-brainer at this stage of the game.
Yeah, I agree. But it's easy for us to say because we're kind of like advanced and we have that conviction, right? Someone's gonna be like, what? Take out mortgage on my house to buy this pixie dust thingy, like people get, they're not gonna understand it. But like, I'd say, like you said, start off slow, right? That's the whole idea, right? You start off in stages, and eventually when you have some, this is what happened to me. I was like, I need more. I can't just have what I have now. I need more of this thing. So that's what happened to me, and then it just snowballed, right? You keep on thinking outside the box. How can I get more? How can I get more? How can I get more? You start like working harder, or like trying to earn different revenue streams to like buy this thing. You know, like you're putting more value back into the marketplace to get, you know, value back.
Yeah, you're working harder. Plus, I think you're paying a lot closer attention to what you're actually spending your money on.
Yeah, that's true too.
Because like in the fiat system, if the dollars that you earn actually are less valuable tomorrow than they were today, the incentive there is to spend those dollars on food, on liquor, on trips. You know, I'm okay with trips because it's an experience, but like Amazon shopping is just like people get it as soon as they get it, they blow it because it doesn't hold any value. That's a whole problem with the dollar, right? And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. I wouldn't suggest that people, if they're new to Bitcoin, go out and, you know, mortgage their house for it. But definitely start slow. Like take what you have, even if you take like 10%, 15% of your investment portfolio, buy some Bitcoin. You can even leave it on exchange, or you can use an ETF. If you're not comfortable with actually storing your keys and protecting your keys yourself yet, I'm fine with that because you're still going to have the exposure to Bitcoin, and it's going to be the fastest horse here over this next decade by far, by a wide margin. And then just keep going. Like take $10 a week, $100 a month, put it into Bitcoin. Take some things around your house that you haven't used for 2 years, sell that, buy Bitcoin. Take this thing very low risk. And exactly what you said there, the more time you spend in Bitcoin, the more you're going to realize that this is what you want to hold, and you're going to work harder and you're going to spend less kind of as the whole journey goes. And
Cool.
just one last thing there. Like I think the main issue that a lot of people have in Bitcoin is that they find it, you know, one way or the other, whether it's through friends, family, YouTube, whatever it is, and they buy some right off the hop. And they're like, well, I don't really understand this, so I'm just going to put a small amount into this thing. And then as time goes on and they have more conviction and understanding of what this asset is, they want to buy more, but they've already kind of missed the boat of like buying a bunch right off the hop because it just gets more expensive the longer you wait for it. So it's like, it's a hard thing to say to people, is like, just go more than you think you need off the hop. But like, that's the strategy here for sure.
Understandable. Do you think Bitcoin makes you want to live longer? You know, it gives you like a lower time preference. I've seen a video where this guy posted he wants to live to like 120, 130 so he can see all the Bitcoin halvings and stuff like that. So I think, you know, the fiat people don't really care about longevity, you know, but if you have a Bitcoin standard or a mindset, you kind of want to live longer. You kind of want to like ride it out because your wealth is increasing over time and it'll just continue to increase, right? Like, so I feel like, what do you think about that?
I've talked to so many people over these last couple of months who just have like a new sense of hope for the world. And that could be a 20-year-old. It could be a 70-year-old, right? I talked to a guy who actually went over to Mexico to get stem cell surgery after, you know, learning about Bitcoin and starting to buy Bitcoin. Because if you think about it, like the fiat system, basically it rots people, right? You work for 40 years, you retire. By that point, you kind of have a lot less energy. You have a lot less willingness to do things. You spent a lot of your life in this job. Maybe you liked it, maybe you didn't like it. But from there, once you retire, you have kind of a fixed income. You probably have some savings that you can pull from. But like for the most part, you're reliant on a fixed income. And that's a huge problem in an inflationary world. You know, before we went off the gold standard, people could have a pension. Their fixed amount would probably cover them for quite a while because costs weren't going up that much. But like, it's a big problem in the inflationary environment. So people leave their job. They kind of feel like they lose a sense of purpose. They get onto this fixed income. They have the same amount coming in every month. But meanwhile, their groceries are going up. Their rent's going up. Everything that they have for costs in their life are going up. And so it's just like deterioration, both energy, purpose, financially. They go into a retirement home and it's just the same thing. Everything's getting more expensive. Their money's going down and losing value every single day. So it's just like a slow rot until you die. It's so sad. It's so sad. And I think that Bitcoin really changes that because you can store your time and energy, all the wealth, all the value that you've added to the world. You can store that in Bitcoin now. And instead of actually going down in value, it's going the opposite way. So if you have a fixed income, but you're saving in Bitcoin, even though your Bitcoin balance is going to go down over time, the purchasing power of that Bitcoin, because it is a fixed supply, is going to go up over time. So you're not rotting anymore. You're not deteriorating. You're actually thriving. And that's why people actually have the hope now in the world to want to live longer. It makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Sorry, I just had a phone call coming in here, but
Yeah, no problem.
I'll block it.
I could talk about when I see like, let's say homelessness, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, man, this thing probably would not have existed on a Bitcoin standard, you know, because the fiat currency system that we have, it's very extractive, you know. Like, I think if we were on a Bitcoin standard, the standard of living of people would be much higher overall across the board. Not speaking like a communistic type of person or whatever, communism, right, or whatever. It's more like it just would have, because things would have been a lot cheaper, and it would have been a lot more like, you know, like humane. You know, like people would, it would be free. It would be abundance. You could say it'd be more abundance for people. So I feel like that would probably not have been a problem. You know, if we stayed on the gold standard, even, or you know, we migrated to the Bitcoin standard.
Well, I mean, if you look back to actually what happened like 111 years ago when they created the Federal Reserve, you gave humans the ability to print money. Like it's not natural at all. And so that system has basically created a way for the people with access, or whoever's close to the money printer, they are the ones who have benefited most from this. The people who have assets like houses, like gold, like Bitcoin, they've also benefited by the money printer, because as they inflate the dollar, the prices of all these assets also go up with it. But the people who have been hurt the most by this is the people who aren't close to the money printer and don't have any assets, because they don't have anything that's going up in value. All they have is expenses in their life. And so they see everything around them going up and up and up, but they're not making any more money. They're just like having to cut back and work harder and harder and get no further ahead. And actually, Jack Mahler's made a really good post about this the other week. And he said in the Great Depression, stocks dropped, I think it was 80% compared to gold. And actually, we just had the same thing happen in the last 20 years. Stocks are actually down 80% against gold, but everybody's measuring it in fiat dollars. That's the whole problem. That's what's broken about this whole system, is everybody measures it in a currency that can be printed, and we have no idea how much dollars actually exist. How do you value something against a currency that we have no idea how many units actually exist? We have like a decent idea. They tell us there's this amount of money supply, but they've never been audited before. So it's like with Bitcoin, you can go to a website right now and you can see how many Bitcoin exist today. And you know how many are going to exist tomorrow and how many are going to exist in 100 years from now. Like it's just a complete different system that Bitcoin is versus the fiat. And nobody can print Bitcoin. That's the whole idea here, is that if you're holding your wealth in Bitcoin, nobody can devalue and steal your time because of that. And so, I mean, it's the simple fact of like the money printing widens the gap for the rich people and the poor people, because the people who don't have assets, they get hurt the most. That's the people who are unable to pay for housing today. But it's just all the incentives that are aligned with the fiat system. Like there's just so much corruption. There's so much bad things in that system. And it's just not natural, right? There's a lot of people who are close to the money printer who have benefited by the ability to print money. And that's just not natural. That's not how it should be, right? In order to get value, in order to get money from something, you should actually have to do something for the world. You should have to contribute. You should have to add value. And that's what Bitcoin is. It's a value added economics, right? You add value, somebody benefits from what you do. They give you value in return for that. That's how you earn a living. That's how you contribute to society. But in the fiat system, whether it's a politician, a government worker, whatever it is, they can just do nothing literally and still get the most money from that. That's not a natural system. And that's why it's, gotten as bad as it has. And that's why it's about to die here soon.
For sure. So switching topics here, do you follow any Bitcoin models such as power law or stock to flow?
I know you do, though. I know you're a big chart guy, but I mean, here, and you kind of do more shorter term stuff though, right? Like short term chart analysis, maybe longer term as well. But I'm kind of under the opinion that like the humans have never had something like Bitcoin before. You can do it with other stocks and other things and other financial assets, but like the world has never seen an asset like Bitcoin before. Like there's a big difference between an asset that's somewhat scarce or kind of scarce or pretty scarce, like gold. Gold is the most scarce asset that we had before Bitcoin, but it's not absolute scarcity. right? And so as more and more people wake up to the fact that the fiat dollar, the fiat system is broken, it's breaking further every day, they start looking for alternatives. And most people first go to precious metals, and then that leads them to Bitcoin. But the whole difference there is that, there's never been anything like this before. And so the human mind can't actually comprehend what's about to happen here with absolute scarcity as more and more people want that asset, but you cannot create more of it no matter how many people want to hold Bitcoin. If you can't create more of that, that just creates a huge explosion. And it could happen any week, any month. I think that there are different factors involved with that. But like we haven't seen the scarcity factor of Bitcoin yet. We will one day, but there's still like 2 million Bitcoin on exchanges. So once that dwindles down and down and down, that's when we're really going to see this thing go from like, $1 million to, let's say, $50 million in not a long time, just because of that scarcity, right? Because with gold, if gold shot up by that much, people would just go find gold. They'd start taking their cavities out of their mouth. They'd start going out to the mountains and buying companies and investing in gold companies. We'd find more gold to meet that demand, right? A stock's doing very well. They're selling a good product that everybody wants. Well, they can make as many of those products as they want to meet the demand for that. We have robots now, we have AI. It's just going to be easier and easier to create products and services to meet the demand for whatever that is. But Bitcoin is the only thing that you cannot create more of, regardless of how many people want to buy it. And so that's why I think that it's very hard to compare it to anything, because there's never been anything like Bitcoin before. So I think that there's maybe a trend there, but I don't subscribe to them because there's no comparables. There's no comparables to Bitcoin.
So what do you think about like people pricing Bitcoin in fiat currency then to price what you actually want? So for example, they'll think that the Bitcoin is technically going up, it is technically going up in fiat currency, but that's not really what's going on under the hood, right? It's just costing more dollars to purchase this thing. But if you just take Bitcoin and compare it right to the product that you want and forget fiat currency ever existed, then it would mean that things are dropping in value or dropping in units to purchase. Like, what do you think about that? Like, a lot of people have that, they can't get past that disconnect right there. Like,
it's a hard thing to get past. It really is. Like, even for me being in Bitcoin for like 2 or 3 years, it took me a long time to figure that out. I literally had to listen to Jeff Booth like 20 times before I figured out, like, as technology improves, things should actually get cheaper, not more expensive. It doesn't make any sense that things are getting more expensive. If they're becoming easier and easier to make, and it's requiring less and less energy to make them, why are they going up in price? That makes no sense at all. So it's a very hard like mindset shift to make. But in terms of like measuring it in fiat, I think that the one thing that I always go back to is like, it's just, again, it's a broken measuring stick. You can't measure something against a system that we don't know how many units actually exist. So even the price of Bitcoin today, it's a lie, because there's probably way more US dollars than we know about right now. So it's like anything that you measure against the US dollar is a lie, because we've been lied to about this. So with Bitcoin and with measuring things in Bitcoin, it's a mindset shift for sure. I had another thing that that's what it was. So when the government prints money, when they add to the debt ceiling, that's one thing that causes Bitcoin to go up, because as you said, there's more US dollars now chasing the scarcity. So it's going to cost you more of these fake dollars to buy this real asset. That's why the price has gone up, because they print more money. But the real reason why Bitcoin is different, and the reason why Bitcoin's price will continue to go up, and I like to call it like purchasing power, right? So it's the price is going up in fiat terms, but it's really, you can buy more things with whatever you have in Bitcoin. And so the reason why that's going to continue going up forever is because of that scarce bottom line, the scarce supply in the equation, right? Like, very simple supply and demand. The supply will not change. In fact, it's only going to actually go down from here, because people are going to lose Bitcoin. They're going to lose access to their Bitcoin. They're going to burn their wallets. People are going to die in a car accident and nobody knew they had Bitcoin. So that actually decreases the supply over time. Meanwhile, as more and more people figure out what's going on here, there's going to be more and more people chasing those scarce units. So the number of people, the demand for this thing is going to continue to go up forever. The units are actually going to continue to go down forever. And if you can figure out what an increasing demand and a decreasing supply, what that does for purchasing power, that's exactly where we're headed to in Bitcoin. So as you said, the fiat price is just a complete, it's an illusion. That's really what it is. That's the best way to say it. It's just a complete illusion. I think that Bitcoin today is worth $5 million just based on everything, we know about Bitcoin. It's based on gold's market cap. Bitcoin is far superior to gold in my eyes. And the only thing that's keeping people out of it is just because it's been going like this for a while. It's chopping. Like nobody cares when it's not going up. And so, yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on it. Is like, don't worry about what the fiat price is. Just try to get as many of those scarce units as you possibly can, because they're just going to continue to gain purchasing power over time.
What else do you think is like a contributing factor of that? Like the fiat currency will continue to expand, right? That's just how the system was designed, right?
So that's one component of it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you other think? Like, is probably the technology too, right? As like you said, as technology continues to improve over time, because it's competition, right? Someone in China or someone in India wants to sell you something cheaper, right? Even the US, let's say they ban productivity or whatever, like someone in another country will do it. Someone somewhere is going to try to drop down that price while keeping the same quality, and you will purchase it from them regardless if you like them or not, So what else do you think is a contributing factor of Bitcoin, like going up in value, quote unquote? So going up in fiat currency, sorry, quote unquote.
Yeah, no, like the first two that I said, there were the increase in the dollar supply. That's one contributing factor to it. Number two is people waking up to the fact that everything else is pretty much fake. Anything that you can create more of, easily and to meet demand, I consider those fake assets. So as more people wake up to what's going on here, the demand for Bitcoin goes up. But the third thing that I would say a contributing factor would be like the ease, the ability to actually access them, right? Because Bitcoin is a global currency, but unfortunately there's a lot of countries around the world who make it very difficult for their citizens to buy Bitcoin and to store Bitcoin. We're pretty lucky here in the US and in Canada here that our governments haven't been too overreaching yet. And actually the US has pretty much gone in the exact opposite direction. Like the friggin' president of the United States has called himself a Bitcoin maxi. Like what else could you need to know about what's coming here? But like the ability for people to buy it. And so when it's easier for people to buy, that means the demand also goes up, right? Because even if somebody wants to do it, wants to buy Bitcoin, but they can't be part of that demand that's buying Bitcoin. So that's kind of the three things that I would say is like the money printer, people waking up to fake versus real assets, and then just the ease, the ability for them to actually buy Bitcoin. That's kind of what's going to drive this thing up. So that's the top line, and the bottom line is the supply will not change. Can't increase the supply of Bitcoin.
Okay. Like you always hear this, like people always say, oh, I wish I could go back in time and buy Bitcoin. But you would probably say the same thing in 10 years from now, if you just would have bought it right now. So like, what do you think about that? People are they late? Is Bitcoin too expensive, quote unquote? Like, how would you tell someone, who's asking you like on a one-on-one meeting, like, hey, is this the right time to buy? Is it did I miss the boat? What would you say to them?
Well, the first thing that I would tell people is like anybody who actually had Bitcoin, every consultation or meeting or session, whatever you want to call it, I have with people, they always start, I usually tell them like, what's your Bitcoin story? How'd you get here? Blah, blah, blah. They always start like, oh, I heard about Bitcoin back in 2013. Well, of course, everybody heard about Bitcoin back then. Like that does make you special. And it does make you stupid for ignoring it, because at that time, nobody was really using Bitcoin. It didn't have the use case that it has today. It didn't have the network and the hash power and energy that's in the Bitcoin network today that it did then. They didn't have the ability to buy it from an exchange like they do today. They didn't have the ability to store it in different wallets and encryption and all these different things like they did today. So like what I tell people is like, even if you bought it in 2013, I'd say like there's a 99.9% chance that you would have sold it or you would have lost it, right? You would have watched it go from $100 to $300 and you'd be like, oh man, I 3X this thing. I have no idea what this thing is. I'm just going to sell it, right? Or because we don't have the same kind of infrastructure in place, they would have lost it or left it on an exchange like Mt. Gox and it would have been wiped out anyway. So it's like, don't ever have regrets in terms of like, you wish you would have got in earlier. But you're absolutely right. In 10 years from now, people are going to look back and say, damn, I wish I would have listened to V back in 2025 when he's talking about Bitcoin, or Jor when he was talking about Bitcoin every day till he was freaking blue in the face. Because if I just would have bought some, I would have just like, I might not be a millionaire today, but like whatever wealth that I had accrued in life, I actually would still have access to. I would still be able to buy things with it and not just devalue itself. And so that's kind of how I think about it. Is like, I said that I think Bitcoin today is worth $5 million. And even if it was $5 million today, I would still take every dollar that I make from working and I would still buy Bitcoin with that, because it is the best way to save your money, right? So people should stop looking at this like an investment that they like should get in low and then buy it high or sell it high later. It's like anything that you have, just store it in Bitcoin and your life's going to get better. If it's $100,000, if it's $100 million, keep trading fake dollars for sats for as long as, you know, uneducated people will accept them still. And I don't think they will forever. Like, we're going to come to a point here soon where people are going to really differentiate between fake assets like fiat currency and real assets. And they're just going to stop accepting dollars for Bitcoin, because it doesn't make any sense to, you know, go to work every day for something that somebody else can print. It doesn't make sense to trade your Bitcoin that nobody can print more of for something that can be printed. It just, the disconnect there is just a lack of education for people. That's all it is. Like, you know, everybody watching this right now, you've gone through a school system where they intentionally didn't tell you what the monetary system is and who prints it and why it's such a secret and why it's such a problem. And so the whole reason why Bitcoin's only $100,000 US right now is lack of education. People don't know about money. People don't know how fake the money is. People don't know what Bitcoin really is, not just what they've heard from CNBC and, you know, what's that dipshit's name on Jim Cramer? It's like they haven't spent any hours. That's what, you know, on the show, I kind of call them that. And it might be mean. Some people might be offended by that, but it is 0 hour dipshit. It's people who have spent zero time in Bitcoin, yet they still have an opinion about it. It's like, that would be like me, who has never watched like a NASCAR race or like know anything about cars. It'd be like me logging into YouTube and start making comments about tire specs or engine specs on NASCAR when I have done zero research about what they actually are. And, you know, it's the same kind of thing. So people, for some reason, because it's such a threat to their system that they're so ingrained in, it's just a lack of education that's going to, you know, move this asset from 100K to 100M.
I remember you put a post on the Bit 7. That was really cool. So do you envision that there's going to be like that new 7 of Bitcoin Treasury companies instead of the magnificent 7 right now?
I forgot about that. Bit 7, was that with the Maple Bitcoin crew? I feel like it was.
It was a community post on YouTube, I believe,
a
couple months ago. And I was like, oh, that really sparked something in my head. I was like, oh, I can see that happening. You know,
it's kind of crazy to me. Yeah, I think about that a lot. And, you know, I've kind of changed my mind a little bit on who I think those companies will be. But it's going to be absolutely true. Like, if we just look at the strategy itself, like, let's just focus on strategy, because I do really believe that they're in a much different class than everybody else. I think Mahler's company with Lutnick and the guy from Tether, I think they'll kind of slowly creep into second place in the next year or so. The 21 Capital, I believe they're called. But strategy is just like in a different world. Like, nobody will ever have as much Bitcoin as strategy has. Countries won't have as much Bitcoin as strategy has. But what's going to happen, and what we've been seeing, is like strategy went from, you know, 2000th in the stock market to like 200th to now, or maybe not 200th yet, but I think that they're in the S&P 500 now. At least they're qualified for it, which means that they're in the top 500. And then as Bitcoin continues to go up, as it becomes more and more difficult for these other companies like Facebook's and Nvidia's and Apple's, their life is going to get harder and harder to compete. As you were talking about there, it's going to get easier and easier to make products. People are going to make them cheaper and cheaper. Their monopolies that they had over everything are slowly going away. And so that capital is going to flow out of the Meg 7 into Bitcoin, as that happens, strategy becomes more valuable, and it goes from 2000s to 200 to 20th to second to top. And once they get to the number one spot on the stock market, they're never going down from there ever. It would take like, I don't even know. They would have to lose all their Bitcoin or something happen to the company for them to ever fall down from that number one spot. So I think that that's what's going to happen. That's kind of the certainty in my life. I don't know what the next 7 will be, but it'll definitely be over a long enough time frame. The company who has the most Bitcoin, the 7 companies with the most Bitcoin, they will hold that bit 7 spot for sure. Because everything else is just going to zero against Bitcoin.
Do you think we're starting a new class of people with Bitcoin and people without?
Yeah, I do.
Like, it's sorry to interrupt you, but just
no,
it's like it's funny because it was created for the people, right? This is money for the people, and it's getting in the hands of so few, and it's harder for the rest of the people to get some. So it's almost like a new class of people who kind of figured it out, who got in at the right time. Because let's say a kid right now who's 5 years old, when they're like 21, 22, like, hey, like I didn't even get a chance to buy this thing, because I didn't understand it. That's how I was, right? Like, I'm not that old. And when I was younger, I was like, when it came out, I'm like, I don't have any money, to buy it. Versus like a 40-year-old or 50-year-old, they probably had a lot of money, to like buy that stuff. So I feel like it's kind of going to create a new class of people, unfortunately. Maybe good or bad, we'll see what happens. Maybe the system will still benefit everyone, but there's gonna be like this special class of people that it might create. What do you like? What are your thoughts on that?
Man, we could do a full show on that question. Honestly, like there's so many different paths to go down with that, and I'm just trying to think of like the best angle for like the audience here of what would be best to talk about. Because that's one question I get quite a bit is like, it's great that people who have Bitcoin today are going to be better off, but like, what about everybody else? What are they going to do? Right. And I really think that, yes, the people who are in Bitcoin today are going to be the biggest beneficiaries. And it really doesn't matter to me how much Bitcoin you have today. 2 things actually matter. Number one is your conviction. Are you going to be able to hold when it goes to $2 million and not sell it for fiat dollars? And the second one is your security. Are you, is your security robust enough that if somebody were to break in your house, you still have your Bitcoin? If your house burned down, would you still have your Bitcoin? If you got in a car crash tomorrow, would your family still have your Bitcoin? Like, these are serious things that people actually need to worry about who have Bitcoin today. So those are the 2 things in my mind that actually matter for people today. You could have 20 Bitcoin, but if you don't have the conviction, you're going to sell it. And if you don't have the security, you're going to lose it. So that's the first part. But the second thing I would say there's like, yes, they're going to be the biggest beneficiaries of this, and they should, because like, as well as I do, it is not an easy thing to get into Bitcoin. It's not. The first step is hard. And then there's like thousands of hours of learning that you have to do to actually like have the conviction and have the security to protect those Bitcoin. So we're lucky to be alive right now in 2025 when we can, go through this together and have the ability to still buy Bitcoin. But we're not lucky in the sense that everything that you have right now, if you have the conviction and the security, you've earned that. Like, that's the whole ethos in Bitcoin, is the proof of work part of this. And if you have those 2 things, you have put in the work. So people in Bitcoin today deserve that benefit. The world's not made to be equal. It's not. This isn't a communist, I don't believe in that kind of stuff. It's the people who work hard, the people who add value and contribute to society. They should have the most in life. And that's actually where I think we're going to, because even though there's going to be beneficiaries of Bitcoin, I think the whole world's going to benefit from being on a Bitcoin standard. Because the whole problem with every aspect of society is people's ability to print money. That could be the Canadian government, the US government, the Federal Reserve, Cuba, Venezuela. Everything was caused by a small group of people having the ability to print money. So when you strip that from them, everybody's life improves. And we talked about homelessness earlier here. That's just a very small microcosm of it. But so people who are here today and probably in the next 10 years are going to be the biggest beneficiaries of this whole thing. But everybody going forward is going to benefit from this, because we're going to be playing by the same set of rules. We're going to have a transparent ledger for us to keep track of everything on. And nobody has the ability to devalue your currency and steal your time anymore. So that's kind of how I see it. And I think that, there's so much things that I want to talk about there, but that's kind of what I would say.
We'll save it for the next show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Like, yeah, even though like some people probably you could say like, oh, they got lucky, right? They got it earlier. But then we also have the benefit of like buying it easier. Like, oh, we have the benefit of the hardware wallet. We had these infrastructure things that they did not have. So same thing, fast forward, let's say 10 years, let's say a kid who's like 15 now and he's going to be 25. Well, I'll be like, hey, well, this never existed when I was buying it. Like you have a easier time holding it, using it, so there's going to be those things as well. It's like that trade-off, right?
100%. And if you zoom out like 10 years from now, I could see kids who are like, 15 years old right now. And as this thing plays out, as it becomes easier and easier to buy Bitcoin and store Bitcoin, like they're basically going to go to work, hopefully, and they're going to get paid. They might get paid in Bitcoin, but even if they're getting paid in something else, there's going to be something that automatically converts that to Bitcoin for them. So there's going to be there won't even be any sort of friction there for somebody to convert their energy into Bitcoin. It's just automatically going to do that for them. And when you understand Bitcoin as like a battery or like a store of value as opposed to an investment, that's where it makes the most sense, because you don't want to store your wealth in anything else, because everything else is fake in my mind.
So someone asked me this recently. I didn't really have like a good answer to it. So I'm hoping, you can elaborate on this. So what will be there to buy if everything trends to zero over time against Bitcoin?
What will there be to buy? You'll be able to buy whatever you want to.
But let's say like your necessities are covered, right? Food would be like pennies.
Yeah,
water,
yeah.
free, air.
No, that's a great question. Actually, that was kind of the second part that I wanted to go off of, actually, from the last part, was like, that's what I see playing out here is like, I do think that there's going to be like kind of like a UBI. Like that's kind of what you're talking about there, like food stamps. Because I'm kind of on the opinion that without fiat, like nobody would be homeless. There's so many resources in this world. There's so much money in this world. There shouldn't be a person on this planet that doesn't have a roof over their head and a pillow under their head. There just shouldn't be. Everybody should have food in their belly. There's more than enough stuff on this planet. It's just been unfairly extracted from the working class of people. And so I do think that we're going to go into a world where, whether it's the Canadian government, whether it's Michael Saylor, but somebody is going to be able to issue tokens of some sort that are going to be backed by Bitcoin to anybody who wants them. Anybody who doesn't like work or have any sort of drive in the world, they're still going to have a roof over their head and they're still going to have food in their stomach. That's how I see this playing out. It might take a decade. It might take 5 decades. But at that point, the one thing that Bitcoiners are going to have, in my opinion anyways, is choice. And maybe I'll just kind of walk you through a real quick way that I think about this. And if you think about the way that the world works today, so every day I drive through these little towns, and some little towns have a little bit more going on than other towns. And there's one town around here that actually had a hog plant pop up about 10 years ago now. And so that hog plant, that turned that town in from like 10,000 people to, let's say, 20,000 people, just because there's so many employees needed there, right? So it caused this huge boom in this town. And so real estate, obviously, they've been building stuff. If you're not working at the plant, maybe you found somewhere else to live and cashed out on your house because there's a huge spike in demand for real estate there. But the world that we're moving into here, with the abundance that you talked about, with the technology, with the AI, in a little while from now, there's not going to be any humans in that factory anymore. It's all going to be robots, and robots don't need houses, right? So what's going to happen there is that all the demand that came into that town, it's all going to be gone, right? So in that sense, people were kind of bounded by where they worked, because when this plant was put up, a whole bunch of people moved to this town specifically for that job. And so they were bounded, their location was bounded by this plant, this hog plant, right? So you combine robotics into this thing where a lot of these humans are actually going to be replaced by robots in the factory, and robots don't need houses. And you combine the fact that with the internet now, people can pretty much work wherever they want to. So I think that Bitcoiners, because they're going to have so much financial leverage and economic power in the future, they're going to be able to move wherever they want to. They're going to be able to work wherever they want to, because they're just going to have so much more ability than everybody else. And so that's kind of what I see. Everybody's going to have so much abundance, but Bitcoiners are going to have a little bit more, and therefore they're going to have the choice of where to move, right? Because before, when we were limited to, where you worked, that's a physical constraint. But if you take that away, for the most part, people can live wherever they want to. And so you're going to have now people moving to towns that have the most to offer, right? Like the most amenities, like golf course, lake, whatever that may be. And so there's only going to be so many houses there, and the people with Bitcoin, they're going to have more economic power. So they're going to be able to outbid the people who don't have Bitcoin. So that's what I think as this plays out. The one thing that Bitcoiners are going to have is choice with everything. Location, food, how they spend their time, where they travel to. Bitcoiners are going to have the choice. Everybody's going to live better. Everybody's going to have their basic needs met. But Bitcoiners are going to be the ones who have the choice to do, to outbid the other person, essentially.
Yeah, one of my questions was like, what's your thoughts on post-labor economics? So I think you pretty much covered that, right? Unless you want to add a little bit more, or...
Well, I mean, if you think about the post-labor economics, there's a couple different ways to think about that. Like, if you look at a city right now, there's still a lot of parking lots. There's still a lot of cars driving around. At the same time as robots are working factories instead of humans, there's going to be autonomous cars drive around in cities. There's going to be less parking lots, more green space. These cars, these Teslas or robotaxis, whatever you want to call them, they're going to be working for Bitcoin. They're not going to be accepting different countries' currencies. It doesn't make any sense. There's going to be one currency. It's going to be Bitcoin. And that's how you're going to pay these cars. That's how you're going to move around and travel. And so when you're paying robots to travel, when you're paying AI to do work for you, they're going to accept sats. And could you imagine a world with all these autonomous cars, all these AIs, and only a fixed amount of sats? Like, that's what I told my brothers. Like, in a decade from now, we're going to be able to take a taxi to like anywhere in the city here for probably 3 sats. Like, that's what's going to happen here, because there's going to be so many things created, and there's going to be so much abundance, but you still need a scarce currency so that it just doesn't go complete chaos, right? So that's how I think about it, is like the people who are holding sats today in any amount, you're going to just have so much leverage and economic power in the future, because there's going to be so much demand for people wanting this currency. It's crazy. Like, I know that you and I spend time in this Bitcoin bubble here, but like, most people have no idea what it is. Most people have no idea what's coming, and it's not their fault, but it just shows how far this thing still has to go before it's accurately measured. And we're nowhere close to that right now.
Yeah, I think not too far in the future, like working would be like, people will be looking in the future saying, you guys used to work? That's a scam. Because like a robot, like let's say a Tesla is building those autonomous Optimus bots, right? And eventually they could do almost everything a human can, 99%, and eventually probably even 100%. And at better rate, everything's better. So that means that they will be able to charge themselves. They can go build their own solar panel, charge themselves, go in the farm, raise the lettuce, or like grow the lettuce, right? Harvest it, wash it, give it to the supermarket, and we just go walk in, and pick it up. Like, they're not going to eat it, right? So I feel like in the future, they're going to look back at us saying, wow, you guys used to go to a job? Like, what is that? So I feel like that's what will happen, right? Everything would be, it's kind of like the iRobot movie. It's going to take a while though. It's definitely going to take a while, but not as long as people think though. It's probably going to happen in our lifetime. It's going to be a substantial change, and it's already pretty substantial right now what they're coming out with. But eventually in the future, I think working is going to be considered like, it'll be something in a museum. I've seen a picture where they put a cubicle in the museum, and the kid was asking, "Oh, son, I used to work in that." He's like, "What, really, Dad?" So he was like, wow, shocked about that.
Well, the best way that I like to think about this, I don't know if you're familiar with Naval.
Yeah, I've heard of it.
Naval
Ravikant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he talked about this about 5 years ago, and he basically said, like, Imagine a world where every single person had was very well trained in software and hardware and coding, and they could build pretty much whatever they wanted to build. What do you think the world would look like if we were able to do that? If every person had that knowledge to do, like, we would just have robots in hospitals, we would have robots driving us around, we would have robots doing everything for us because we could build that. And now with the AI that we have now, we essentially have that today. Like, every single person, regardless of how much knowledge you have about coding or development or, whatever, you can basically get an AI. If you just talk them through it, they can build things for you. You don't need that knowledge anymore. So we have that kind of at the palm of our hands right now. And this is like the first inning of that, the whole thing. So I absolutely subscribe to that theory of, like, we're going to have more than we ever need. The people who are working will do it because they want to, like, to contribute, build things and express their creativity in a way, but nobody's going to be forced to. And, the more you work, the more value that you add, the more options you're going to have in the future, but we're not going to need to. We're going to have everything we could ever imagine. And I think, whoever you subscribe to, God or, whatever, but, without Bitcoin, I think that the world would look a lot different, because our privacy would be very much encroached on. I think that the people who have the power today would be able to control these things in a way where it would still extract our time and energy somehow. But because of Bitcoin and because of open source technology, I think that we're basically just going to go take the side street around these centralized entities and say, give them 2 of these and just tell them to kick rocks. So that's how I see it. It is going to take some time, but as you said there, this stuff happens pretty fast. Technology moves very fast. It moves one way. And, if you're holding Bitcoin in 2025 today, you're going to be wealthier than you could ever truly, like, I can't even imagine what the world's going to look like in a couple of decades from now. Think about 20 years ago. We didn't even have cell phones 20 years ago. Like, they were a thing that only the rich people used. And it's just like the whole thing of, like, everything's getting cheaper and cheaper. If you're actually measuring your life in Bitcoin, products, services, everything is just housing prices. Everything's getting cheaper and everything will only continue to get cheaper. And if you're still measuring your life and earning things in fiat, unfortunately, it's just going to get harder and harder for you until, we kind of break past this whole thing. But it's going to take some time. So, that's what I would just tell people is, like, whatever energy you built up, whatever wealth you have stored in Bitcoin, and you're going to be pretty much immune from whatever these bozo governments, decide to do over these next decades.
Yeah. And I think what Jor and I are talking about is, like, kind of like the end goal, right, of humanity. It's going to be really nice, probably. And I think the road there probably is like a dark cloud. There's going to be a lot of chaos. Like me and you, we'd probably be shitting our pants if we did not have Bitcoin right now.
Oh man, I talk about this quite a bit, but, like, I was in such a dark place before I learned about Bitcoin, because I was kind of at the stage where, like, my eyes were open to the corruption in the world, like between the governments and the media and big pharma, everything, Hollywood. I was like, oh my God, like, I had no idea any of this stuff was happening. Like, I was completely oblivious to it. But then before I found Bitcoin, I was like, well, there's no way out of this. Like, we're screwed. They're the people who control the world now. We're never going to get out of this thing. But until you can actually, and it takes a while to get there, because even when you first hear Bitcoin, you're like, cool, I can save my money. It's not going to go down. But just the simple fact that you can send a transaction to somebody else in the world without anybody else's permission, that is so incredibly powerful. It is. And until you actually go through the process of sending somebody else Bitcoin and not having to ask your bank's permission or make sure it's, at a certain time or whatever it is, you don't need anybody's permission to save your money in Bitcoin, and you don't need anybody's permission to spend your Bitcoin. And that really changes everything. That's what Bitcoin's whole goal was, to separate money from state. And that's exactly what it's doing right now.
Yeah, I think another good part, or a pro, is that you could take it with you, right? I think a lot of people, as chaos continues to develop around the world, because as we're coming into, like, the 9th inning of the fiat currency, as, like, using a baseball term, like the end game soon, like, things are going to get more chaotic, right? It's the two systems clashing against each other. You have, honest free money, and you have corrupt, printable money, right? Fighting against each other. And, you could choose your side, right? So I think people are probably going to start, emigrating, whatever, probably throughout the globe. You can see like mass, like, um, people moving around. Exodus. There you go. Is the right word. Exodus of people, and you can't take your house. Who's going to buy it when you have to leave within 6 months or even a month or even a week? Like, do you have a 72-hour backup plan? Where can you be in 72 hours in the world if something happens, right? You can't take your house. You only can take $10,000 worth of valuables on a plane. After that, they're just going to keep it. They're just going to confiscate it. And that's not a lot of money. Most people got more than that. So you can't take your gold bars. You can't take a silver. You only get to hit $10,000 worth of cash. You can't take your house. A couple of watches, maybe you only can wear so many watches on you. What are you gonna do? But so that's the thing about Bitcoin. Like it is you. You can memorize the passphrase. You could write it down in your pants if you want, so no one knows it's there while you get out of the country, right? So like you can hide it and take it, and you could do stuff like that. People still think a cold wallet's like a USB stick. It's very like it's hidden. So I think that's another pro to that.
100%, man. I'm so glad you talked about that, because it is that's one thing I think I've taken away most from Michael Saylor with everything that he's taught me so far, is like Bitcoin is really the only asset that you can truly own. Like gold is the second closest to that. But as Saylor says, he's like, gold's yours until somebody more powerful comes along and takes it from you, right? Like you could have as much gold as you want to stored in your basement, but if the government shows up or a militia shows up or whoever, anybody shows up, somebody with a bigger gun than you shows up at your house, they now have your gold. And with Bitcoin, they can't do that if you secure your Bitcoin properly. And that's the thing that I'm really most excited about. Aside from like everybody's lives improving, the abundance we're going to have, Bitcoin really raises the cost of violence, because as more and more people understand what this asset is and how well you can protect it, it's not going to make any sense to break into somebody's house if you can't take anything from them anyways, right? What would be the point of killing somebody? The only way to ensure that you actually can't get their Bitcoin is by killing them. So it's going to significantly decrease the violence, the war, because it really raises the cost of it. It just doesn't make any sense to try to take somebody's Bitcoin if you have to try to extract it from their brain. And so you're going to hop on a plane. Somebody can break in your house. Somebody could shoot a rocket launcher at your house. They still can't get your Bitcoin. Like that's a very, very, very powerful idea.
Yep. So switching topics. So Bitcoin Treasury companies, like what's your favorite? Do you believe Strategy will be the most valuable company in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. Like I said, I think it's going to get to number one. I think it's going to stay there forever. But the cool thing about Strategy is they also have these different products that are being built around them, right? Like Strike, Strife, Stride, MSTY. Very interested in those. I think that if you're somebody who's over like the age of 50, you should be taking a really hard look at what those products are. For somebody who's younger, I would probably suggest just holding Bitcoin and Strategy, because there's way more upside to holding products like that. But the other company that I'm excited about is 21 Capital. I think it's CEP on the ticker right now, Cantor Enterprise Partners or something. But that's the company that I'm excited about, because I like Mahlers. I think that he's a very good communicator, and I think that that's a very big part of the world that we're moving into. Just like Saylor, very good communicators, very good salesman, can explain things that the average person can understand, has a very big presence. But there's a couple other parts of that too. Like Howard Lutnick is very, very, very closely tied to the president of the United States, right? This guy has the majority of his wealth in Bitcoin. His fund, Cantor Fitzgerald, 49% of their fund is in Strategy. So he's in this thing, and he knows where it's going, and he's a big part of the 21 Capital here. And then the third part, and I think the most important part, is Paulo from Tether. He's another part of this 21 Capital. And the reason why I like this, maybe not more than Strategy, but about the same as Strategy, is because these guys know how to build a business in the new world. Like if you look at what Tether's doing right now, they have like 50 employees, maybe even less than that. And they're making billions of dollars a month in revenue without hardly any human capital. So between Strike and Paulo and their knowledge of this technology and how to build things in this new world, plus like the backing of somebody like SoftBank is also in there, but Howard Lutnick, that's a very powerful team that they're putting together there. So I do think that once they become 21 Capital, I think it's still CEP until they go through their, what's it called? Spec, I think, or SPAC.
Oh, the SPAC.
Special Purpose Acquisition Corp. Through this, between them going from CEP to 21 Capital, I think there actually is a pretty big opportunity there. So I have some strategy. I have a bit of their other products there, just kind of as a retirement fund. Not a whole lot. I still hold the most in Bitcoin and strategy, but I think 21 Capital is a good one to watch. I think that they're going to make some serious waves here once they finally get everything kind of in order there.
Have you heard about Metaplanet?
Yeah, I have. Super interesting too.
Yeah, I feel like they might be number 2. They're pretty aggressive. It's that Simon, that CEO of theirs, is pretty similar to Michael Saylor. I think they have the same vision and the conviction. I think they might be. He's actually Metaplanet's actually top 5 now, and they just bought another, I think, 2,000 today to get them to 15,000. I feel like there might be something to keep an eye on too. So it's pretty cool. So you can see how that Bitcoin has a worldwide influence. Someone in Japan, is buying it, right? I mean, it's worldwide. Someone in Tokyo, this company, like basically it was just a hotel company going bankrupt. They sold all their hotels during 2020 and they saved one just to keep it nostalgic, right? The company, and they bought a Bitcoin and they've been buying it ever since. And it's one of the most traded, volatile, volume-based companies in Japan. Just how something can be bought and just completely change your life, as a company or even as a person.
Well, think back to what we were talking about with the demand, and the third part there was ability to access Bitcoin, right? Why is this stock so popular? It's because Japanese companies don't have any other way to buy Bitcoin. Like a lot of these public companies and funds, pension funds, they actually can't hold Bitcoin. It's within their regulations and rules that they can't hold Bitcoin because it's so new, right? A lot of these regulations were written decades ago. So what they can hold is public equity. And so you have strategy, you have Metaplanet, you have these different companies who are basically just giving people the ability to have exposure to Bitcoin. That's why they're so popular, is because if these companies could buy Bitcoin and knew how to, store that Bitcoin, they would just do that, but they can't. So that's why Metaplanet, that's why strategy, that's why these companies have got so much traction. But the thing that kind of scares me with Metaplanet, and the reason why I don't really talk about it and why I haven't bought any yet, is because, like you said there, they were a failing hotel chain. So I do think that there's going to be demand for it in the short term, but eventually every company is going to be able to hold their own Bitcoin. So there won't be as much of a need for something like Metaplanet. And that's why I like 21 Capitals, because I think that they're actually going to build things within this ecosystem that can actually generate more profit and actually supercharge that and put that into Bitcoin as well. Not just taking money from other people and buying Bitcoin, but actually generating a profit also that you can also convert into Bitcoin. So that's why I like Paulo and Jack on here, because they've actually built very successful businesses and they're just kind of supercharging it with Bitcoin in the background.
I see.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. So you prefer a company who has cash flow instead of a company just strictly as a Bitcoin company selling the equity and issuing debt.
Yeah. I mean, that's one way to put it. I think cash flow is one, but I just think that it's about the value, right? Like everything. Actually, this has probably been one of my favorite conversations I've ever had so far, because we kind of just tie things in perfectly right now. But like, if you think about the value add here of what Metaplanet, the value that they're providing to the world is they're giving them the ability to buy Bitcoin. The companies who couldn't buy Bitcoin before, they can buy Metaplanet shares who is buying Bitcoin. That's the value that they're adding, which is great. And they've obviously done extremely well with that. The value that they have right now is in very high demand. I don't think it's going to be that way forever though. So their value overall is going to decrease over time. A company like Strategy, who is building a whole bunch of these different products around it, I think that that's some value there. I think that between Jack and Tether and what Tether's doing with USDT, that's a lot of value being added to the world. So the more value that you add, the more you get back. You call it cash flow, but then you can store that in Bitcoin. And so I do think that kind of what you're saying there, yes, cash flow is a big part of it, because I do think that the well's going to dry up of like the demand for these metaplanets and strategies and semblers, because everybody at some point is going to change their rules and regulations that they can hold Bitcoin, and they're going to have a whole team of people that stores that Bitcoin for them. And so then the value of Metaplanet and Semler and some of these other ones is actually going to fall. But if you have a profitable business and you're adding value and you convert that value into Bitcoin, that's the real power here, I think.
Nice. So coming back to like, the AI utopia we might see in the future, there was a tweet by Micah Kaufman. He's the CEO of Fiverr. I don't know if you saw his tweet.
Fiverr, like the contracting company?
No, Fiverr. Yeah, I don't know what they do, but basically he said in the tweet that AI is coming for your job. And he even said my job too,
Yep.
So what are your thoughts about that? Like the CEO of a company just told his employees, like, you better start like either transitioning or pivoting to a different role that AI might not get to, like something a little more physical or something like a personal brand, or, you own a bunch of assets and you'll be covered, right? He even said, my job is on the line here. So eventually in the future, I think Jeff Booth said this, that you'll have one person running $1 trillion company.
That's why I'm so excited about like what Tether's doing and what Strike's doing, is because they're actually, before the world there, they've already built these businesses with such small employees, but earning such a huge profit. So they already know the roadmap here. And that's a powerful thing right now. But a couple of things I'd say is he's absolutely right. Bless you. Bless you. Did you see that?
Yeah.
That was awesome. I don't think I've ever seen him sneeze like that. That was he must have got something up his nose. But what I was saying, there's like with the AI stuff, I think that there's going to be two things that happen here. And I've talked about this before, but I think it's definitely worth mentioning. Number one is that people are going to learn the difference between real assets and fake assets. That's going to be a big part of this next decade. So real assets to me are gold, land, Bitcoin. Everything else is fake. Everything else you can print more of. If demand increases, you can create more. But the other thing too is like there's going to be a huge shift between people who are actually adding value to the world and people who aren't adding value to the world. That's kind of this next transition that I see. So for example, like politicians, they don't add any value to anybody's life. They just argue and bullshit, right? So they're going to disappear. Government workers who sit there for 8 hours a day and read the newspaper, they're going to disappear, right? They're going to be replaced. It's the people who are actually adding value to the world in some way. Those are the ones who are going to actually stick around. And I could try to paraphrase it as, in a way, but the one thing that I would actually tell people to listen to, it's 3.5 hours long, but there's a video on YouTube called How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky by Naval. And he pretty much talks about this thing called a specific skill, which is basically kind of like your brand, the skills that only you have. A human robot can't replace you. It can replace the tasks that you do. But if you build a brand and you kind of, leverage media, you leverage code, you leverage AI, that's the people who are going to get furthest ahead over this next decade. And I've listened to that podcast probably 20 times. And every time I listen to it, I learn something new. But it kind of talks about this exact same thing that we're living through right now and how you can actually, not die, but actually really thrive in this new economy that's coming here.
Okay. Have you seen growth in decentralized social platforms like Nostr?
I don't know if I'd call it growth. I think that there has been. I mean, if you look at the actual stats, I think it's probably flatlined or gone down actually. But, I think that the whole problem with Nostr right now is that people talk about like the censorship resistant aspect of it. But like for the most part, the average person doesn't give two shits about censorship resistant, right? They don't say any things that would ever get them banned. They're kind of like on par with what their government wants them to do. They don't care about that. I think the real unlock with Nostr is the ability to earn Bitcoin, earn sats, right? Connect people who are like-minded. To me, it doesn't really matter how big Nostr gets. I think that eventually the people who want to be there are going to find Nostr, right? And that's Bitcoiners. And so if you think about it this way, like if you get onto Nostr and you start making posts, you don't need any sort of like thresholds to like subscribers before you start making money. You can make one post on there, and if people like it, they can send you real value in Bitcoin. So that's pretty powerful in itself. But like I think that there's going to be this whole new economy where people find each other, they tell each other what kind of skills they have, special skills, and then people can pay them for it. And so the thing that, and I've actually, you know, done this in my life for the last year, and don't tell Justin Trudeau or whoever's in charge of the country now, but like what you can do is you can actually add value. You can, you know, post it on Nostr. People can send value back. And then instead of like having to go through the banking system or cash it out, you can use things like Bitrefill, you know, to use those sats to like buy gift cards. So, you know, you can create your whole life, your own little ecosystem outside of the traditional rails with things like Lightning, with Bitcoin, with Nostr, with all these different things, even YouTube. Like if you have a channel and you talk about whatever you're interested in and people pay you to, you know, consult with them. I talked to the guy today, this morning. He's a fishing guide. And so he's actually teaching people on school or like a Patreon type thing, how to create their own fishing guide company. And so he could do something like that. And basically people could pay him Bitcoin and he never has to go back through the old system anymore. He can just buy like gift cards to gas stations, to restaurants, to grocery stores, to Amazons. You can take the sats that you earn from people, convert that into gift cards and use that to buy things without ever touching the fiat system. So I think that that's going to be the real use case for Nostr, is like connecting with people. I usually say like the bigger your network within Bitcoin, the bigger that gets, the faster you can leave the fiat system, because you can start relying on other people for products and for services and for your, you know, fixing your car, buying your beef. The more Bitcoiners you have in your network, the less reliance you have on the fiat system. You don't have to go through that system anymore. And that's what Bitcoin is. It's a revolution, a peaceful revolution where people just stop using that currency. And the tools like Nostr and these different things, that's, you know, it's beautiful.
What books do you recommend people read on Bitcoin or like money, you know, to educate themselves?
One book that changed my life was The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. I'm sure you've read that one. I mean, if you read that today through a Bitcoin lens, it's like 100 times more powerful. So that's one. I think the second one would be Sovereign Individual. It's a very dense book. It's hard to read, but it basically paints a really good picture of what's happening here and why the centralized parties like banks, governments, they're losing so much powers because of the internet and this whole cyber economy that's being built. And then 3, I would suggest listen to How to Get Rich by Naval. Just type in Naval or How to Get Rich on YouTube. 3.5 hours long. Listen to that thing till you can't listen to things anymore, and your whole life's going to change. I guarantee it.
Cool. So that was the last question, Jor. You know, thank you for your time. Appreciate you coming on. Always, that was a very enlightening conversation we had. Where can people connect with you or purchase your services? I know you just came out with a new membership. I think that was a very big hit. I think people are very interested in that. If you would like to explain it.
Yeah, so there's a couple different things. The first thing I'd say is go over to the YouTube channel called 88 Sats Radio. That's where I do post a lot of videos. I do a weekly show on there. I've been actually decentralized myself away from YouTube a little bit. I spend actually every morning on Rumble now. So Rumble's a great experience over there as a viewer. Anyways, it's a little bit tough as a guy behind the camera here, but it's getting better. They don't censor anybody, which I like, because like I said, I had a couple of videos taken down off YouTube, which really opened my eyes. But yeah, the school. So if you're interested in like learning about Bitcoin, growing your Bitcoin network, learning things about MSTY, how to leverage that, how to design your lifestyle around like these products that are available using Bitcoin. Me and 2 other guys, one guy's named Rajat and one guy's name is Forrest. Anybody in Bitcoin has probably heard of these guys. They're awesome guys, very knowledgeable. They have slightly different skill sets than me, which makes it pretty powerful. But we have a new community in school. So I think it was Alex Harmozy who created this school platform. It's awesome. Like, I'm a big fan of it. So I don't know, I'll maybe send you the link to that. I don't really know how to say the link, what it is. It's pretty long, So maybe you can put that in the show notes or something. But yeah, if there's anybody who's like somewhat new to Bitcoin or just wants a much more rounded knowledge in Bitcoin, we talk about like security, UTXOs, private keys, again, earning money, a whole slew of things. And it's just a week old and there's already, I think, 105 members in there or something. So pretty good. It's a pretty good, I'm really excited about that. That's where I've been putting a lot of my time and energy lately.
Nice. Yeah, and for those who are listening, I highly recommend Joe. I've watched his channel for probably about more than a year now on his YouTube channel. It's very smart, you know, and I think this show, if you manage to watch it to this end, it's just the tip of the iceberg. You know, this was hopefully this motivates you enough just to at least book a consultation, you know, with Joe. Ask him a question, send him some emails, right? When I was younger, I didn't want to listen to other people. You know, I want to do everything myself. And I probably would be a lot further, and probably a lot of other people too, you know, if they listen to people who knew what they're talking about, right? You find a specialist, you find an expert. They're going to save a lot of time, a lot of mistakes, you know, that you'll make, a lot of money as well. You know, Bitcoin is not something you want to mess around with. You know, it really isn't. You want to make sure you do it right from the beginning, because it maximizes, it completely goes exponential, right? If you lose, like you said, Joe, you lose 1 million sats, that could be, you know, generational wealth, you know, for you. So you got to do this right, you know, book a consultation, check out the membership. I highly recommend Joe.
Thanks, V. Yeah. And I mean, just going back to what we're talking about there is like, it doesn't matter. You could have 50 Bitcoin today, but again, if you don't have the conviction and you don't have that Bitcoin properly secured, you might as well have 0 Bitcoin. And just think about the time and energy and value that you've added to the world to get that Bitcoin. And just because you're procrastinating, too focused on what the price of Bitcoin is, that you kind of half-assed everything else and it's gone, your grandkids are going to be not very happy with you. But yeah, that's a cool thing about the last place I direct people to is actually bitcoincitadel.net. And for consultations, if you actually want help setting up a hardware wallet, setting up cold storage, learning about encryption and how it can kind of help your Bitcoin stuff, bitcoincitadel.net, and you can actually book like 15 or half an hour call with me. And there's no set rate. You can actually just send me whatever you feel is worth to you, value for value. I'm a big believer in, you know, you add value to somebody, they can send it back to you. You shouldn't, you know, cap it or have a limit on it. It should just be whatever people learn from it. So I have like a short call where people can just ask a couple questions, and you can find that on bitcoincitadel.net.
Cool. All right, Joe. Take care, man.
Thanks, V. Appreciate it, buddy.